Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 1, Frigid Wind. The regiment of Prince of Jianxing Shenwei suffered a crushing defeat at the Hashi River in the northeast. The prefecture of Dun Province's front line fell into the enemy's hands, and 30,000 soldiers were buried alive in the Hashi sinkhole. You were among them, but why were you the only one to escape unscathed? Shen Zequin's eyes were glazed and unfocused. He did not answer. The interrogator pounded on the table and leaned forward to question him with a malicious glare. It's because Shenwei was in covert communication with the 12 tribes of Bianxia and had the intention to present the 6 prefectures of Zongbo over to our foreign enemies. You people want to collude with the enemy to breach the defenses of the Chu capital from within and outside of it. That's why the Bianxia cavalry did not kill you. Am I right? Shen Zequin moved his dry, chapped lips. He struggled with some effort to listen to the interrogator's question. His parched throat throbbed as he answered haltingly, "No, no." The interrogator snapped in a harsh voice, "Shenwei burned himself to death for fear of punishment. The Jinyue has already presented written correspondence of their secret liaisons to the emperor. And yet, you lad still dares to deny it. How truly pig-headed of you." Shen Zequin felt as if he was in a daze. He had no idea how long it had been since he had gotten some sleep. It was as if he was being suspended by a single thread high up in the air, and if he so much as let go from a moment of negligence, he would fall and smash into pieces. The interrogator spread open the confession statement and took a few glances at it. "You said last night that you were able to emerge unscathed from the Hashi sinkhole alive because your elder brother saved you. Is that right?" The scene that day vaguely materialized before Shen Zequin's eyes. The sinkhole was so deep, and there were countless soldiers crowded together, but even with the pile of corpses underfoot growing higher and higher, they could not reach the edge of the sinkhole. No matter what they did, they could not climb their way up. The Bianxia cavalry surrounded the sinkhole, and the sound of flying arrows slicing through the frigid wind pierced through the night. Blood overflowed his calves as anguished wails and the gasps of those on their deathbed clung to his ears. Shen Zequin began to hyperventilate and tremble in his seat. He lost control of himself and clutched his hair, unable to stop a strangled sob from escaping his throat. "You are lying." The interrogator raised the confession statement and flicked it at Shen Zequin. "Your elder brother is Shen Zhuji, the eldest legitimate son of the Prince of Jianxing. He abandoned 30,000 soldiers before the Hashi sinkhole and fled on the sly with his own private soldiers, but the Bianxia cavalry caught him with a rope and dragged him along the public road by the Hashi River to his death. He was already dead by the time the 12 tribes of Bianxia slaughtered those soldiers. There was no way he could have saved you." Shen Zequin's mind was in a whirl. The interrogator's voice sounded so far away, and all he could hear was the never-ending wails. "Where is the way out? Where are the reinforcements? The dead squeezed against the dead." Those putrid, decaying flesh was pressing down on his hands. Mugur was shielding him above his head while he laid sprawled over the bloodied carcasses. He listened to Mugur's ragged breathing, yet the cries that escaped his throat were those of despair. "Your big brother is invincible." Jimu struggled to smile, but tears were already streaming down his face. He continued in a sobbing voice, "I'm an impregnable fortress. I'll just have to hang in there for a bit and it'll all be fine. We hang in there and the reinforcements will arrive soon. When that time comes, I'll return home with you to join father and mother. I still have to look for your sister-in-law." The interrogator banged the table and bellowed, "Come clean with it." Shen Zequin began to struggle. He looked as if he wanted to break free from some invisible shackles, but the Jinyue swarmed over and pinned him down against the table. "You are in our imperial prison. I have not employed extreme torture on you on account of your young age. But since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame us for being ruthless. Men, bring the rod." Shen Zequin's arms were tied with ropes before he was dragged to the open space in the room. Someone set a bench down with a clatter and bound his legs to it. A burly man beside him lifted his flogging rod, weighed it in his hands, and swung it down with a crack. "I'll ask you one more time." The interrogator brushed aside the foam on his tea with the teacup's lid. It was only after he took a few languid sips that he asked, "Did Shen Wei collude with the enemy to commit treason?" Shen Zequan refused to relent. He shouted intermittently between the flogging. "No, no." The interrogator set aside the teacup. "The Shen clan would not be here today if you had used this fortitude on the battlefield. Continue to flog him." Shen Zequan was gradually crumbling. He hung his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Shen Wei never colluded with the enemies. We suffered a crushing defeat at the battle at the Hashi River, all because Shen Wei recklessly fought the enemy head-on. After the defeat at the Hashi River, there was still a chance to redeem the situation at the front line of Dun province. Yet he withdrew his troops for no reason despite the great disparity of power between our troops and the enemies. Because of this, the 3 cities of the prefecture of Duan province fell into the enemy's hands. 10 of thousands of commoners in those cities lost their lives to the Biancha machetes." At this point, the interrogator let out a long sigh and continued hatefully. "It was a bloodbath in the 6 prefectures of Zongbo. Shen Wei led his troops and withdrew south. The battle in the prefecture of Deng province was the most suspicious of all. The Kedong Chaijun commandery garrison had already crossed Tianfei watchtower to provide assistance, but he abandoned the strategy of a pincer attack and instead mobilized thousands of cavalry to escort his own family to the city of Dangheng. This resulted in the entire line of defense in the prefecture of Deng province to collapse. Wasn't this all done intentionally? If it weren't for the Libe armored cavalry galloping for 3 straight nights across the glacial river, the Biancha cavalry would have already arrived at the gates of Chu capital." Shen Zequan felt dizzy and he was drenched in cold sweat. The interrogator flung the confession at him in contempt, and it smashed into the back of his head. "You'd rather be a dog than a man of Zongbo. And this time, Shen Wei has made himself the enemy of the great Zhou. You still want to deny it? You have no choice but to plead guilty." Shen Zequan was in so much pain that half of his body was numbed. He sprawled on the bench, looking at that confession before his eyes. The ink writings on it were clear. Every character was like a humiliating lash of the whip on his face as it announced to everyone in the world: Shen Wei was a traitor of his country. He is lower than a dog. He had left the 6 prefectures of Zongbo to overrun with corpses. Even now, no one had gone to collect those corpses buried in the Hashi sinkhole, because everyone in the cities of Dun province had been massacred. Shen Wei burned himself to his death, but this ghastly debt had to be borne by someone alive. Shen Wei had a flock of wives and concubines along with numerous sons. But they all perished when the Biancha cavalry invaded the prefecture of Dun province. It was only because Shen Zequan was of lowly birth and had been raised out of the family residence that he managed to escape. Shen Zequan was dragged back to his cell and his heels left behind trails of blood in their paths. He faced the wall and gazed at that small, narrow window. The frigid wind howled and the snow came pelting down. The pitch-black night stretched on without end. In his delirium, the hollow wind song swept his mind back to the sinkhole. Jimu's strength was failing. Each breath was a heaving effort. Blood trickled down his helmet onto Shen Zequan's nape and was rapidly freezing in the air. The screaming had gone quiet with only tortured moans, and the winter gale remained. Shen Zequan was nose to nose with the mangled face of a dead soldier. His legs were trapped under sagging carcasses. The corner of someone's shield dug into his stomach. Every pant was blood-scented. He was crying soundlessly, teeth clenched against sobs. Absently, he studied that trampled face. He didn't know if it was a soldier he'd recognize. Gur Shen Zequan sobbed softly. I'm scared." The jut in Jimu's throat bobbed. He gently patted Shen Zequan's head. "It's all right. We'll be fine." Shen Zequan heard the singing of the soldiers at death's door. The gale tore apart the sound of the song and sent tattered pieces of it fluttering away into this frigid night. Battle in the city south. Death at the north of the city wall. Left out in the open, unburied. Free for all the crows to feed. Gur. Shenzequan whispered beneath him. I'll carry you on my back. Gur. Jimu's body was like a distorted shield. He smiled and said in a hoarse voice, I can walk on my own. Were you struck by an arrow? No, Jimu's tears had dried up. He said breezily. Those Biancha bastards can't shoot straight. Shenzequan's fingers were soaking in flesh and blood. With some difficulty, he wiped his face. Xiniang made dumplings. Once we return home, we'll eat many bowls of it. Jimu sighed. I'm a slow eater. Don't steal my share. Shenzequan gave a firm nod beneath him. The snow gradually blanketed Jimu's body. He seemed tired and sleepy, his voice was so faint, and he did not even have the energy to move his fingers. The song was sung very slowly, and when it reached the line the valiant cavalry perished in battle, Jimu closed his eyes. Shenzequan said, I'll also give Gur my money, to marry sister-in-law. Gur. Jimu remained silent. It was as if he was tired of listening to his words and could not help but fall asleep. Shenzequan began to tremble all over. He forgot when did the Biancha cavalry left and how he climbed his way out. When he propped himself up and lifted himself out, there was only a dead silence amidst the heavy snow. The stacked corpses cushioned under his knees all looked like discarded burlap sacks. Shenzequan looked back and began to choke with sobs. Jimu's back had been pierced with such a dense cluster of arrows that his entire person had turned into a twisted hedgehog. So much of his blood had trickled down onto Shenzequan's back, but Shenzequan never realized it. The sound of horse hooves came swiftly in pursuit like the looming thunder. Shenzequan suddenly gave a start as he jolted awake. He felt like retching, but then he realized that both of his wrists had been firmly bound and there was a burlap sack filled with soil laying on his chest. The sack was growing heavier and heavier as it pressed down on his lungs. He could not even utter a sound. This was the technique called dirt burial employed by the prison on those prisoners whom they did not want to survive, which would not leave a trace of an injury behind. If Shenzequan had not woken up earlier, he would have been but a mere corpse gone cold by daybreak. Someone was trying to kill him. End chapter. Note: 1. Jinyue were elite bodyguards and secret police that directly served the emperors of Ming Dynasty. They were authorized to overrule judicial proceedings in prosecutions, with full autonomy granted in arresting, interrogating and punishing anyone, including nobles and the emperor's relatives. They were in charge of imperial prison. 2. Shifu means mentor/teacher. 3. Xiniang means the wife of one's Shifu. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I was an outcast Liege. Chapter 2, Death by Flogging. It was gloomy inside the imperial prison. Shenzequan's hands and legs felt cold. He was beginning to find it hard to breathe. He kept twisting his wrists, but the hemp rope was so tightly secured around him that his attempts were futile. The sack of soil was squashing down on his chest, making him feel as if he had been thrown into a deep pool. His ears were ringing and his breathing was shallow. He found it hard to continue breathing, as if he was drowning. Shenzequan turned his eyes to stare at the candlelight beyond the bars. Several Jinyue in the hall were drinking and shouting as they played some sort of game. They were simply too occupied to look back at Shenzequan. The sack of soil nailed Shenzequan down onto a crudely made straw mat. Nausea, stemming from the suffocation, engulfed him like a surge of flood water. His vision swam. Shenzequan raised his head high and gritted his teeth to move his legs. Both his legs had been flogged until they were near numb that he felt nothing when he raised them. He stepped on the left corner of the bed that was made up of wooden planks. It was already rotting from bug infestation. It had in fact been damaged a little when he sat down on it on his very first day here. His breathing grew labored. Shenzequan stepped on that corner and stomped down on it with all his strength. but his legs were so weak that his kick did not even make a sound. The bed plank did not budge even the slightest. Cold sweat streamed down in torrents until the clothes on his back were soaked through. He wanted to live. Frantic whimpers escaped from Shen Zequin's throat. He bit down on his tongue until it bled and stomped down again on the bed plank. Ji Mu's brutalized and barely recognizable corpse was the horsewhip igniting his desire to live. Ji Mu's voice seemed to be still reverberating in his ears. "You have to live." Shen Zequin struck that wooden plank furiously until he finally heard a thud. Half of the bedboard collapsed and his body fell over on his side. The sack of soil tumbled down after him. He threw himself onto the ground as if he had just broken through the water surface and sucked in big mouthfuls of air. The ground was icy cold. Shen Zequin's injured legs would not heed his commands, so he propped himself up with his elbows. Sweat trickled down the bridge of his nose. It was cold in prison, but he felt as if his whole body was burning. It was so searing hot that his insides were boiling. Eventually, he could not help but lower his head to dry heave. Shen Wei deserved to die. There were 120,000 military forces in Zongbo, divided among the 6 prefectures to establish a defensive perimeter. After the defeat at Hashi River, the Bianchi cavalry invaded Dun province. Just as the interrogator had said, there was still a chance to redeem the situation. Shen Wei not only had a well-trained and powerful army, he also had ample army provision. There were also the garrison troops in the 3 cities of Duan province available for his deployment. Yet, he unexpectedly abandoned Duan province and shrank back like a coward to hide out in the prince's residence in Dun province. His retreat was the prelude to the fall of Zongbo. The Bianchi cavalry massacred the 3 cities of Duan province and the morale of the garrison troops took a massive plunge. They fled south in a panic. Everyone thought that Shen Wei would battle to the death with the 12 tribes of Bianchi in Dun province, but he took to his heels yet again when he caught wind of the news of their arrival. The Zongbo army retreated in defeat one battle after another, while the Bianchi cavalry was like a steel blade in its full glory perforating through the 6 prefectures' territories. They came spurring their horses on and traveled light into battle, relying solely on their spoils of war to pursue their way within 800 li of the Chu capital, the imperial capital city of Great Zhou. If Shen Wei had implemented the scorched earth policy during his retreat and burned down the granaries in the city so that nothing was left behind for the enemies, then there would have been no way for the Bianchi cavalry could advance that far. This was because they carried no army supplies with them and had to rely solely on the grains from the cities they had invaded to replenish their provisions. Once the grains in the city had been wiped out with fire, even the toughest Bianchi cavalry would have to go hungry. A starving soldier would have been unable to continue fighting. When the time comes, the Liege armored cavalry would have crossed the glacial river to intercept the Bianchi 12 tribes' retreat, while the Qidong 5 commandery garrisons would seal off all their possible escape routes from the Tianfei watchtower. Those machetes would then be trapped like turtles in a jar and would have never survived the winter. But Shen Wei did not do so. He did not just give up resisting, he also left all the granaries in the city to the Bianchi cavalry. The Bianchi cavalry relied on the Great Zhou's provisions to carry out a massacre of the cities in the Great Zhou. Thanks to Shen Wei, their horses were well fed enough to herd the common folks and captured soldiers to the Hashi River, where they were all slaughtered by the Bianchi cavalry in one night. Shen Zequin had a very close call with death. And now, the Chu capital wanted to settle accounts. It was obvious that Shen Wei's deployment orders while he was still alive, were all sloppily made. It did indeed seem like he was colluding with the Bianchi 12 tribes to launch an attack from within and outside of the country. Yet, Shen Wei set himself on fire due to fear of punishment and immolated himself to death, destroying all the documents along with him. Even the Jin Yue, who were effective and efficient in their duties, were now at their wits' end. The emperor wanted to get to the bottom of the matter, so all they could do was to keep on interrogating the only remaining person who might be in the know, Shen Zequin. But Shen Zequin's biological mother was a mere dancer in Duan province. Shen Wei had too many sons and Shen Zequan was his eighth son born to a concubine. There was really no place for him in the clan going by his age or rank. So, he had long been driven out from the prince's residence in Dun province to fend for himself in Duan province. Shen Wei himself probably did not even remember he still had this son. Someone was trying to kill him. That was not exactly a secret. He had been sent here to be a scapegoat for his father. He was the last remaining member of the Shen clan in Zongbo and the son was obliged to pay for his father's debts. So once the interrogation in the imperial prison was concluded, the emperor would surely use his life to offer as a sacrifice during the memorial for the 30,000 soldiers who were killed at the Hashi River. Even so, it should not be through an assassination like this. Shen Zequan wiped the corner of his lips with his thumb and turned his head to spit out the spittle of blood in his mouth. If Shen Wei had indeed conspired with their foreign enemies with the intention to commit treason, then Shen Zequan would have to die sooner or later. Why make an unnecessary move to assassinate an insignificant bastard born of a concubine like him? There was still someone in the Chu capital who was worried about the result of the investigation. If that was the case, then there must have been something suspicious about the defeat of Shen Wei's troops. But Shen Zequan knew nothing. He had a Shifu in Duan province and his brother, Ji Mu, was his Shifu's only son. To him, Shen Wei was merely the prince of Jianxing, who had nothing to do with him. He had absolutely no idea if Shen Wei had conspired with the enemies. But he must deny it. The ground that Shen Zequan was sprawled on was so bone-chillingly cold that he was even more awake than he had been during the day. He was a felon that the Jinyi Wei arrested under the orders of an imperial edict. All arrest warrants, writs of summons, and official rulings came directly from the top. It brought him directly from the hands of Xiao Jiming, the heir apparent of Prince of Liege, right to the imperial prison, bypassing even the joint trial of the three judicial offices. This was clearly an indication of the emperor's unrelenting determination to never condone this and to get to the bottom of the matter. But, under this kind of situation, who would have the guts to make such a reckless move to silence him before the emperor could personally interrogate him? The cold wind was still howling at the window. Shen Zequan turned his eyes and stared at the wall in the dark. He did not dare to close them again. At first light the next day, Shen Zequan was brought back to the hall again. A snowstorm raged outside. The interrogator who had been cold towards him the other day was now smiling as he served tea with both hands and waited with deference at the side of the classical-styled, wooden chair. There was an old, fair-faced, and beardless eunuch sitting on the seat. He was wearing the official hat of the eunuchs made of velvet for the winter season and embroidered robes in the palace style depicting fecund gourds. He had yet to remove his heavy cloak and he held an exquisite gold and jade plum blossom hand warmer in his lap. He was in meditative state and didn't open his eyes until he heard the sound of their entry. He then opened his eyes to look at Shen Zequan. Godfather, Ji Lei, who was acting on the imperial edict to interrogate Shen Zequan, stooped over to say, "This is the surviving descendant of the prince of Jianxing, Shen Wei." Pan Rugui looked at Shen Zequan and asked, "How did it come to this?" Ji Lei was aware that Pan Rugui was not asking him why Shen Zequan had ended up all filthy and in a sorry estate but rather about Ji Lei's inability to produce anything of substance from the interrogations. Ji Lei's forehead was drenched in sweat but he did not dare to wipe it away. He maintained his bow and responded, "This lad is ignorant. He has been delirious ever since we brought him back from Zongbo. We don't know who put him up to it but he has been refusing to confess. This is a major criminal ordered to be arrested by an imperial decree." Pan Rugui did not accept the tea he offered. A child of 15 or 16 of age, who was sent to the famous imperial prison to be personally interrogated by you, His Excellency Ji. And yet you still can't even hand over a signed confession statement. Cupping the teacup in his hands, Ji Lei said with a bitter smile, "It was precisely because of that, I do not dare to employ the tortures without authorization." He was already suffering from a cold when he arrived. If he dies because we did not hold back on the torture, then this case of Shenwei would end up as a cold case. Pan Rugui scrutinized Shen Zequan for a moment and said, "We are all our master's dogs. There's no point in keeping a dog if its fangs are no longer sharp. I know you have your own difficulties, but this is all part of your duties. His Majesty wants to see him now." This is his way of showing understanding and consideration for the Jinyi way. How could you still gripe about it? Jilei hurriedly prostrated himself in obeisance and said, "Godfather is right. This son has been duly castigated." Pan Rugui gave a snort of acknowledgement and said, "Clean him up. He can't seek an audience with His Majesty with how filthy he looks." Shen Zequan was taken by a servant to wash up and have the injuries on his thigh simply bandaged before he was given a set of clean cotton attire to put on. He was at their mercy as they ordered him about. He was too indisposed to walk. It even took him some effort to climb onto the horse carriage. Pan Rugui finally accepted Jilei's tea. He stared at Shen Zequan's back and said, "Is he really the last surviving member of the Shen clan?" Jilei answered, "That's right. He is the only survivor from the Hashi sinkhole. The heir apparent of the Prince of Liege, Master Xiao personally took him under arrest. All this while, he has been detained in the prisoner wagon of the Liege armored cavalry. No one has ever touched him on the way here." Pan Rugui sipped his cold tea. After a long time, he gave a skin-deep smile and said, "Xiao Shisui is a prudent man." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Shen Zequan got off the carriage and let the men of Jinyi Wei carry him along a lengthy path. The heavy snow blew onto his face. The ushering eunuch leading the way hurried along without uttering a word of nonsense. When Pan Rugui arrived at the Mingli Hall, he was immediately met by a junior eunuch who was waiting respectfully under the eaves. He removed the cloak for Pan Rugui, helped him change the outer layer of his robe and then took the hand warmer in Pan Rugui's hands. They had already announced his arrival inside. Pan Rugui kowtowed by the door and said, "Your Majesty, this slave has brought the boy." A short while later, a low and unhurried voice rang out, "Bring him in." Shen Zequan's breathing hitched. They had already supported him in. There was incense burning inside, but it was not stifling. He listened to the sounds of intermittent coughs as he swept his gaze out of the corner of his eye and caught a glimpse of 2 feet inside the hall. Emperor Xian was dressed in a dark navy blue daipao. He was skinny to the point of being bony and his body was frail. Major and minor illnesses had never stopped plaguing him in the 3 years he had ascended to the throne. He sat on the throne, his rectangular face looking particularly gentle and delicate due to his pallid complexion. Jilei has been interrogating him for several days. Emperor Xian glanced at Jilei, who was kneeling at the back. "Has a conclusion been reached?" Jilei kowtowed and said, replying to His Majesty, "This lad's words are incoherent and full of loopholes. Everything he has confessed these few days is contradictory and cannot be believed." Emperor Xian said, "Present all those he has confessed to me." Jilei took out the tidied-up confession statement from his bosom and handed it with both hands to Pan Rugui. Pan Rugui hurried forward again and respectfully presented it to Emperor Xian. Emperor Xian looked through it once. When he reached the part about Hashi sinkhole, he covered his mouth and started coughing. He refused to let Pan Rugui wipe it for him. Instead, he wiped off the blood between his lips himself with a handkerchief. He said in a heavy voice, 30,000 soldiers lost their lives at the sinkhole but not Shen Wei. This truly makes one's blood boils. Shen Zequan closed his eyes, and his chest began to pound. Sure enough, the next moment, he heard Emperor Xian's orders. "Raise your head." Shen Zequan's breathing quickened. His palms on the ground that were propping himself up felt icy cold. He raised his head slowly, his eyes carefully landing on Emperor Xian's boots. Emperor Xian looked at him and asked, "You are Shen Wei's son and the only survivor of the Hashi sinkhole. What do you have to say?" Shen Zequan's eyes reddened. His body trembled ever so slightly as he sobbed and said nothing. Without a change in expression, Emperor Xian demanded, "Answer me." Shen Zequin suddenly raised his eyes. The tears trickled down along his cheeks. He raised his eyes for a fleeting moment, then he kowtowed hard onto the ground. His shoulders trembled as his voice became tight and choked with sobs. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! My father is loyal to the country." He was too ashamed to face the country and the elders of Zongbo after the defeat of his troops. That's why he set himself on fire to atone for it. Emperor Xian rebuked, "What nonsense are you spouting? If he was that devoted to the country, why would he keep retreating?" Shen Zequin's voice was hoarse from his sobbing. "My father sent all his sons onto the battlefield. My eldest brother, Shen Zhuji, was tortured to death by those Biancha people who dragged him behind a horse along the Hashi public route. If it were not for his loyalty, how would he have been able to go to such an extent?" Emperor Xian said, "How dare you bring up the Hashi battle?" Shen Zhuji fled before the battle. His crime is unpardonable. Shen Zequin looked up at Emperor Xian with tears streaming from his eyes. He said in a raspy voice, "The battle at Hashi was a bloodbath. My eldest brother may be muddle-headed and incompetent, but he defended Hashi for 3 days. It was within these 3 days that the military intelligence of the war situation was delivered to Qidong and Liege. If it weren't for these 3 days..." He was so choked with emotions that he could not continue. Emperor Xian looked at the confession in his hand. The entire hall was silent except for the sounds of Shen Zequin's sobs. Amidst this excruciatingly long silence, Shen Zequin dug his fingernails into his flesh. Emperor Xian suddenly gave a long sigh and asked, "Has Shen Wei ever colluded with the enemies?" Shen Zequin's answer was resolute and decisive. "Never." Unexpectedly, Emperor Xian set down the confession and said in a voice that had abruptly turned cold, "This boy is cunning and harbors the intent to deceive the monarch. Zhen must not allow you to live. Pan Rugui, drag him away and flog him to death at the gates of Duan city." "This slave obeys." Pan Rugui immediately received his orders and bowed to retreat. Shen Zequin felt cold all over as if he had been doused with a basin of icy water. He suddenly put up a struggle, but the Jinyi Wei covered his mouth and swiftly dragged him out of Mingli Hall. End chapter. Notes. 1. Shisui means the main heir or heir apparent of the household. 2. Daipao is a loose robe commonly worn by men during the Ming dynasty. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 3, Birds of Prey. Pan Rugui strode towards the gate of Duan city. The Jinyi Wei lieutenants stood at attention into 2 rows flanking each side and stayed as silent as winter cicadas. Once Pan Rugui came to a halt and announced Emperor Xian's verbal edict, the Jinyi Wei began their work. The Jinyi Wei gagged Shen Zequin and swiftly wrapped him up in a thick cotton-padded garment before they made him lie face down on the ground. Pan Rugui leaned over in the cold wind to observe Shen Zequin's state. He raised his fingers to cover his lips feebly and coughed a few times before he said softly, "You are so young and yet you have the nerve to dare and put on such a melodramatic display before His Majesty. If you had just truthfully confessed Shen Wei's crime of treason, you might still have a slim chance at survival." Shen Zequin shut his eyes tightly. Cold sweat had already soaked through his clothes. Pan Rugui rose to his feet and said, "Start flogging." The Jinyi Wei lieutenants on both sides immediately shouted in unison, "Let the rod fall." A thunderous roar followed right after. Hit. Before the words were fully out of their mouths, the rod wrapped in an iron sheet with barbs came whistling down on Shen Zequin and dealt him a heavy blow. After 3 strikes, he heard another voice. "Hit him hard." The pain on his flesh was like a searing fire blazing through his body. They hit Shen Zequin until he could no longer move. All he could do was to clamp his teeth down tightly on the gag in his mouth. He was unable to swallow his blood in time, and its coppery and salty taste saturated his mouth. Shen Zequin was still hanging on to his last breath as the dripping sweat stung his wide-opened eyes. The sky was overcast, and the heavy snow fell like willow catkins. Flogging was not a job that just anyone could do. As the saying went, faint at 20 strokes, lame at 50 suggested, there were many ways to flog a man. This job was akin to the of a family craft handed down through generations and was not any easier to train than learning a trade elsewhere. Moreover, this job did not just require one to have good martial arts skills but also a discerning eye. These floggers had been doing this for so long that all they had to do was to look at the expressions of these great eunuchs from the Directorate of Ceremonies to know who should receive superficial wounds but serious internal injuries, and vice versa. Emperor Xian's decree today was death by flogging, and Pan Rugui did not seem to value him either. That meant there was no way an about turn would happen, he was a man who had to die. So, these Jin Yue brought out their special skills. Within 50 strokes, Shenzhequan must die. Pan Rugui kept an eye on the timing and noticed that Shenzhequan had already gone motionless with his head drooping. He raised his hand over the hand warmer and was about to give his instructions when he saw an umbrella floating towards them on the path. A beauty in royal robes stood underneath it. The dark clouds on Pan Rugui's face dispersed in a flash and transformed into a smile. Although he did not personally step forward in greeting, the quick-wit eunuch beside him had already gone over to offer her his arm in support. My sincere respects to third young miss. It's such a cold day. If Her Majesty the Empress Dowager has any instructions, you can just send someone to pass the message. Pan Rugui spoke as he took 2 steps closer. Hua Xiangyi raised her hand lightly to motion to the Jin Yue to not make any move. She was delicate and beautiful. All these years, the Empress Dowager had kept her by her side to nurture her. Her facial features resembled those of the Empress Dowager when the latter was young. Although she went by the address of the third young miss of the Decity's Hua clan in Chu capital, everyone knew she was a distinguished lady of the palace. Even the emperor doted on her like his own dear little sister. Hua Xiangyi said in a slow and soft voice. Gong Gong, is the one sprawled on the ground the son of Zongbo's Shen clan, Shenzhequan. Pan Rugui moved in tandem with Hua Xiangyi's steps and replied, that's the one. His Majesty has just issued the decree to flog him to death. Hua Xiangyi said, His Majesty was in a fit of anger earlier. If Shenzhequan were to die, then we'll never get to the bottom of Shen Wei's treason. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager had arrived at Mingli Hall half a quarter ago. His Majesty heeded her advice and has since calmed down some. Pan Rugui let out an "oh, my" and said, His Majesty always listens to Her Majesty the Empress Dowager's counsel. He was in such a terrible rage earlier that the servant did not dare to say a word even if I had a mind to. Hua Xiangyi smiled at Pan Rugui and said, His Majesty said to flog him. Isn't that what you did? Pan Rugui took a few more steps and smiled, too. That's right. This servant was in such a hurry earlier when I heard the word flog and gave this lad a good beating. May this servant know how we should deal with him now? Hua Xiangyi swept a glance at Shenzhequan and said, before His Majesty's retrial, drag him back to the imperial prison first. This child's life is of utmost importance. I'm counting on Gong Gong to inform His Excellency Ji to take good care of him by all means. That goes without saying. Pan Rugui said, how would Ji Lei dare to turn a deaf ear to third young miss instructions? The weather is cold, and the roads are slippery. Xiao Fusui, hold the third young miss steady. As soon as Hua Xiangyi left, Pan Rugui turned back and said to the 2 rows of Jin Yue, His Majesty said to flog. We are about done hitting this person. Drag him back. You've heard third young miss words earlier. That's Her Majesty, the Empress Dowager's wish. Return and inform Ji Lei that all the people involved in this case are immortals. If something were to happen to the lad under his watch. Pan Rugui coughed slowly. Even the Jade Emperor himself wouldn't be able to protect that head of his. Xiao Fusui returned to help support Pan Rugui by the arm. The long and wide stretch of road was empty. He whispered, Forefather, we let him go just like this. Will His Majesty really not blame us later? Pan Rugui stepped on the snow and said, His Majesty knows deep down that we can't be faulted for this. He walked a few steps. Snowflakes squeezed their way into his fur collar. A promise is worth 1,000 ounces of gold. A sovereign fears going back on his words the most. His Majesty suffered another bout of serious illness due to the invasion of the Biancha 12 tribes. These days, he has been considering conferring a princess title on third young miss to please Her Majesty the Empress Dowager. At this point in time, His Majesty will have to acquiesce even if Her Majesty the Empress Dowager were to make other demands of him, let alone to spare a man's life. As he spoke, Pan Rugui inclined his head to look at Xiao Fusui. When have you ever seen Her Majesty the Empress Dowager change her orders? Regardless of which case it was, the real master was the one who stood by his or her own words. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Shenzequan was delirious with fever. One moment, he saw Jimu dying before his eyes. The next moment, he saw himself while he was still living in Duan province. The wind of Duan province caressed its way past the banner. Shi Niang raised the curtain to step out with a white porcelain bowl in her hand. It was filled with dumplings that had thin skins and a large portion of fillings. Tell your brother to come home. Shi Niang called out to him, he can't even sit still for a moment. Get him to hurry back for his meal. Shenzequan climbed over the corridor's railing, took a few steps over to his Shi Niang and bit the dumpling off the chopsticks before running off. The dumpling was so scalding hot that he kept huffing through his mouth. As he went out of the door, he saw his Shifu, Ji Gang, sitting on the stairs. Thus, he squatted beside him. Ji Gang was sanding down a boulder. He turned his head to harumph at Shenzequan and said, Silly lad, is dumpling worth getting this excited over? Call your brother home, we'll go have a proper feast at Yuan Yang Tavern. Before Shenzequan could reply, Shi Niang was already pulling at Ji Gang's ear as she said, turning your nose up at dumplings, huh? How capable of you! If your pockets are that fat, why did you get a wife for? Take these two idiot boys and go live by yourselves then. Shenzequan laughed out loud. He leaped down the stairs and waved to his Shifu and Shi Niang before he ran out to the alley to look for his brother, Ji Mu. Snow was falling thickly along the path. Shenzequan could not find his brother. The more he walked, the further he went, and the colder he became. Gur! Shenzequan dashed all over the place, shouting. Ji Mu! Come home for lunch. Gradually, the sound of horse hooves surrounded him. The heavy snow obstructed his view. Shenzequan was deeply entrenched in the sound of horse hooves, yet he could see no one around. The sound of fighting erupted in his ears and warm blood splattered over his face. There were stabs of pain in both of Shenzequan's legs as an overwhelming force pinned him down onto the ground. He saw them again, dead men so close to his face. The rain of arrows whistled in the wind. The man on his back was heavy, and that sticky and warm liquid trickled down along his neck and cheeks. This time, he knew what it was. Shenzequan woke up trembling. He was drenched in sweat and shivering uncontrollably from cold. He lay prone on the bedboard as he waited for his eyes to adjust to the darkness. There were still people in the prison room. A servant cleared away the filthy items and lit the oil lamp. Shenzequan felt parched. The servant seemed to be aware of his thirst and poured a bowl of cold water for him before setting it on the bed plank. Shenzequan nudged the bowl closer with his fingers bit by bit, spilling half of it. His body flushed with cold and warm in turns. No one spoke. Shenzequan was the only one left after the servant withdrew. He slipped in and out of consciousness. This night seemed to drag on endlessly. No matter how long he waited, dawn never came. The servant came back to change Shenzequan's bandages. He was much more awake this time. Ji Lei was there too, looking at him beyond the bars as he said in a cold voice, "You are one lucky bastard. A scourge truly never dies. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager spared your life. I suppose you don't even know why. Shen Zequan lowered his head and said nothing. Ji Lei continued, I know that Ji Gang is your Shifu. The Jianghu's recluse, Ji Gang. I was a fellow disciple with him 20 years ago. Together, we served the Jinyi Wei in Chu capital. You probably didn't know this, but he was a vice commander of a third rank. I've also learned that Ji clan fist of his, too. Shen Zequan raised his head and looked at him. Ji Lei opened the prison door and waited for the servant to leave. Once there was no one around, he sat down beside Shen Zequan's bed. Later on, he got into trouble. His offense was one where he would have to be beheaded for it. But the previous emperor was benevolent. In the end, he did not put him to death and simply exiled him beyond the pass. Ji Lei propped up his knee and grinned at Shen Zequan with his back to the light. Your Shifu has no capability to speak of. He's just a lucky loser. Guess how he survived? Through the glory of your Xiniang, just like how you survived now. You probably don't even know who your Xiniang is. Let me tell you then, your Xiniang is Hua Pingting. There are the 8 cities of Sennan in Chu capital, amongst which is the Dis city being governed by the Hua family. The same Hua family to which our Empress Dowager belongs. So, it's all because of your Xiniang that the Empress Dowager spared your life. Ji Lei lowered his head and whispered. But who would have known that your Xiniang would die during the military upheaval? I'm telling you. Ji Gang is a worthless wretch. His father died 20 years ago, and 20 years later, his wife and son died too. Do you know who killed them? I think deep down you do, better than anyone else. It was Shen Wei. Shen Zequan's breathing hitched. Shen Wei opened up the line of defense at Hashi River, which allowed the Bianchi cavalry to invade and ran rampant all over. Their machete severed your Xiniang's throat. Everything that happened before she breathed her last could make Ji Gang's life a living hell. Duan province fell into the enemy's hands. You said it was your brother who saved you. Ji Lei leaned back, sized up the back of his hand, and said, Ji Mu, right? Ji Gang raised you and watched you grow up, so Ji Mu was your martial brother. He was Ji Gang's only son, Ji Gang's only offspring, and the Ji clan's only descendant. But because of Shen Wei and you, he died too. Pierced through the heart with tens of thousands of arrows. His remains were even left behind in the sinkhole, subjected to the humiliation of being trampled by the horses of the Bianchi cavalry. I wonder how Ji Gang would have felt if he was still alive and had to collect his son's body. Shen Zequan suddenly lifted his body. Ji Lei easily pushed him back down and continued, Shen Wei betrayed his country and colluded with the enemies. This is a debt that you have to shoulder. Each day you live, the ghosts of countless wronged souls in Zongbo will cry out in fury. When you fall asleep at night, you will have time to figure out which amongst those voices were your Shifu or your Xiniang. You're alive today, but aren't you better off dead? Can you forgive Shen Wei? If you forgive Shen Wei and help to exonerate him, then you will let your Shifu and his entire family down. No matter what, Ji Gang is the benefactor who has raised and nurtured you. How can you do to him such a disloyal and unfilial act? Besides, even if you drag out your pathetic existence, there is no longer anyone else in this world who will empathize with you. When you arrived in Chu capital, you became Shen Wei. People are furious. Those who hate you to the core are more than one could count. Numerous people wish you dead. You will die sooner or later. Rather than dying a dubious death, why not speak frankly to His Majesty and come clean about Shen Wei's crimes? It would also comfort your Shifu's soul in heaven. Ji Lei suddenly stopped talking when he saw Shen Zequan, who was pinned on the bed plank, smiling. The young man's deathly pale face took on a sinister, frosty turn. Shen Wei did not collude with the enemies. Shen Zequan enunciated each word through clenched teeth. Shen Wei never colluded with the enemies. Ji Lei lifted Shen Zequan and slammed him into the wall. A bang rang out, and dust rained down from the collision. The impact knocked the breath out of Shen Zequan, who began to cough incessantly. "There are so many ways I can use to kill you," Jilei said, "ungrateful little bastard. You got lucky this time and managed to escape death by the skin of your teeth. And now you really think you can survive beyond today?" Turning around, he dragged Shen Zequan to the door of the cell and kicked it open before heading out. "I must act impartially upon the Empress Dowager's edict, but there are many in Great Zhou who are free to do as they please. If you wish to be stupid about this, then I'll give you what you want. You want to die? Here's your executioner." The city gates of the Chu capital suddenly opened wide and a row of pitch-black heavy armored cavalry swiftly galloped in from beyond the gates, sounding like peals of thunder. Shen Zequan was dragged along the path. The Jin Jiu scattered, and the packed crowd split into two to make way for the heavy armored cavalry. A Liege's bird of prey hovered in the sky as the sounds of clanking armor resonated against his heart. The thunder of hooves grew louder as the foremost armored horse came charging directly at him, while Shen Zequan could only stand and watch. The steed under the heavy armor was like a ferocious beast, huffing out hot clouds of air as it galloped a few steps before them. It was reined in just as it was about to crash into them. Hooves rose high in the air. By the time it came to a stop, the man on the back of the steed had already turned around and dismounted. Jilei stepped forward and said aloud, "Xiao." The man did not even look at Jilei and headed straight for Shen Zequan. Shen Zequan had only just moved his shackles when the man kicked Shen Zequan right on the chest with lightning speed. The force of this kick was so powerful that Shen Zequan did not even get the chance to steel himself for it. Blood splattered the moment he opened his mouth. He flew backwards and wrenched up what was probably all of his organs. End chapter.